Welcome into Training Camp Live, presented by Publix. Casey Phillips and Scott Smith here, and it is, as always, a joy to be with you on this glorious day. Unfortunately, we are yet again in a situation where we hope you guys are okay with pretty much mainly just seeing us and hearing us because they've gone inside again. It's so sad. It's great that we have the indoor. It is a reminder of how wonderful it is. This time it is less because of the weather that is happening right now, because as you can see, it's not that bad. More about the weather that happened last night. The fields got absolutely drenched, as anyone who lives in Tampa understands based on all the rain last night. And the thing is, it actually can become a bit of an injury risk. So this is not one of those, oh, they don't like playing in the wet. Like, they were doing wet ball drills earlier to prepare for playing in the rain. It is not about that. It is that when the fields get this soft, occasionally that can be just a recipe for disaster, and you do not want to have any unnecessary risk for the guys. So that is why they've chosen to go inside, which is, again, just a great opportunity that they have.
And it's also probably pretty good timing after yesterday's practice, which was really blazingly hot and humid. There was to the point that a few guys, let's say, didn't really get to keep their breakfast with them for very long. It was a rough one.
Always a glorious sight whenever we're out here.
Some tempers were flaring over. We now know that if you get in a fight, you have to run for the rest of practice. And a couple guys found that out yesterday.
I don't know how mad I'd have to be at someone to decide it was still worth it at that point, especially in that heat. So I'm thinking that now that they know that, there may be less fighting that happens, especially considering it was fighting between the guys that would probably least like to run.
At least want to run, yeah.
That it was more of the linemen that were fighting, and so I'm thinking that was probably a pretty good deterrent to keep that from happening again.
We'll see.
Yeah, so as always, we are going to be taking your questions at the end of this episode, so make sure you go ahead and send those in on Facebook or on YouTube. We'll be scrolling through those. For now, I know we always love starting with our Frontier play of the day from yesterday's practice.
Good burst on that one.
Yeah, Rojo has
good.
looked good, and it's always hard to tell. We always like to throw out a million disclaimers during training camp, especially with run plays, that they're not full-on tackling right now. Every run is going to turn into a touchdown, but it is really great to watch, like you said, the burst, those first few steps. And what are some of the things in general you feel like you can tell about, a play from a running back during camp?
Yeah, first of all, it's a little hard from drill to drill to know if they're going to be doing live or close to live tackling or whatever. Apparently there's more of it this year, but it's still a little hard to tell the difference. Like I said before, those first quick cuts on that particular play, he obviously got around the edge very quickly. And right there at the end, when Mike Edwards was trying to get him, Mike did make a diving effort to wrap him up, and he made another little juke to the outside, and a little burst of speed. So you can see those sorts of things, and you can see how quick, honestly, you can see how quick and shifty they are in some of the individual drills when they're jumping over low bags and things like that. So Rojo to us has looked really good, but like you said, it's the disclaimer of training camp because every run looks like a touchdown run sometimes.
And thankfully we do at least have a shot of some of the quarterbacks out here, which is really nice. They kind of saved us last time they went inside too, to give us something to show the fans a little bit. So we got a few of our quarterbacks working on some things out here. You brought up the idea of how it's kind of changed from maybe drill to drill or, period to period in practice, of how hard they're going, how live it truly is or not in this. How have you seen the comparison of maybe how this camp has gone so far with the padded portion to others in terms of how physical it is and the way, what can you tell about what they're trying to accomplish here as compared to other years with this shortened off season?
I'm not sure I can really tell that much of a difference, to be honest with you. Maybe that wasn't the answer you're looking for, but every training camp is intense, I think, because of the heat, and you're out here for so long, and like we said, tempers start to flare a little bit, and guys are fighting for jobs, and maybe that's even a little more true this year because it's just such a compressed schedule, just so little of an opportunity for some of these guys to state their case. I mean, take the safeties. Everybody's raving about how Antoine Winfield looks out here, but is it going to be enough time for him to crack the starting lineup? Can he, are they going to put him in over Jordan Whitehead and Mike Edwards after 3 weeks? I don't know. And so a lot of guys are probably, battling really, really hard to try to make an impression as quickly as possible. But just from an overall standpoint, every training camp tends to look pretty intense.
Yeah, that's what I had wondered, is if there would be a higher intensity with guys knowing how short of a time they had to prove themselves, or if maybe, coach would have tried to kind of temper things at least at the beginning because you don't have as much of a gradual ramp-up period. That I do feel like it is such a tightrope walk, therefore, you're not wanting to rush people back too hard, push too hard, get any unnecessary injuries, but you are needing to see what you have on the roster.
Well, I think they jumped right in pretty much right from the beginning on Monday because they felt good about how the coaches said he felt really good about how almost everybody came into camp in good shape, and then that ramp-up period really did work. It was like 10 days, and I think they made the most of it.
And I know yesterday we got to hear from tight ends coach Rick Christophel, and we also got to hear from Rob Gronkowski. These are their first times talking to the media since training camp has started. So what did you learn from, Coach Christophel about, we've had so many discussions of how is he going to, I mean, he just has such a wealth of riches in that room.
That's the truth.
And I mean, what a great problem to have. We've heard everybody talk about how is he going to use everyone? How do you get the most out of everyone? Are certain guys going to lose reps now with Gronk here? Did you feel like you got anything out of him of learning a little bit more about what he's going to be doing with everybody?
Well, I felt good after hearing Bruce and Gronkowski and Christophel talk, because all of them were saying that it looks like the Rob Gronkowski not of 2018, when he was battling through so many injuries and just ways that he didn't feel good, to the point that he decided to retire. He now, after a year, feels a lot better, doesn't have back issues, isn't wearing that giant arm brace that he had. And, Bruce thinks he looks like the Gronkowski of 4 or 5 years ago, which if we got that guy would be an unbelievable pickup. But I mean, like you said, look at the depth of the tight ends here. That's the highest yards per reception of all tight ends over the last decade. And OJ's actually on the top of the list. Now, that's everybody that had at least 50 catches. And the top two guys on the list right there, obviously the sample size for Gronkowski is way more than the others in the top 5, so that's probably even more impressive. But OJ was saying earlier in the week that he can already tell on the practice field that when him and Gronkowski are on the field at the same time, it's a total nightmare of mismatches for opposing defenses. And he can tell that here on the practice field. I think it's going to be a big deal when you have those two, or Gronkowski and Brait, or OJ and Brait, and you never have to worry about really losing a level of performance when you put one of the others in. I mean, look at this list. Cam Brait, 4th in the league in touchdowns over the last 5 years, and I actually usually we do top 5s, but I expanded this one to 6 because Gronkowski's on there and he didn't even play last year. So he did all of that with one less year than these guys. And the top 3 guys on that list are, other than Kittle, are practically probably, well, at least Kelce and Ertz are probably and Kittle are probably considered the 3 best tight ends in the league right now. And Brait's right there with them in terms of scoring touchdowns. So, that's a lot of his touchdowns come in the red zone. Most of them from he said before, like from about the 15-yard line is his sweet spot. They've just had a real good work with him running seam routes and so on, and little quick posts into the end zone that he catches right around the goal line. So it's just an embarrassment of riches there. And I think we've talked about it before that there's a good chance that the Buccaneers will be in more 12 personnel this year, which is 2 tight ends, and we did that about 20% of the time. I wouldn't be surprised to see it be 25 or a little bit higher, just because your second tight end is probably a more proven and accomplished pass catcher than your third receiver right now.
Yeah, and what that showed me, I feel like those 2 graphics really showed me this idea that no matter where you are on the field, 12 personnel could be an amazing option, because if it's in the red zone, you could have Cam and Gronk out there that we know they are good at scoring touchdowns from that close in. And you can also have OJ and Gronk that can get these big chunk yardage plays more in the middle of the field. And I mean, there's just nowhere on the field you don't have a good option for 12 personnel and guys that really fit that role. And then even we talked about the mismatch idea. I mean, how bad it would be just with OJ, what that does to a team. Now you have him and Gronk out there, and then what does the defense do?
Which sows confusion for the defense, because also Gronkowski's a great blocker. OJ's been a bit up and down, which he acknowledges, but that's what he's working on the most. His footwork and blocking, he wants to be a great blocker and can be. So you got 2 guys that could block for running plays, or they could both go out, or one of them could go out. So defenses are going to be stressed not knowing what you're going to do out of that 12 personnel. There's so much you can do. Last year, I have to admit, the Bucs running numbers out of 12 personnel were not good. They should be good, but they weren't. Hopefully this year will be a lot better, and that way teams will have to respect it, and then you can sneak 1 or 2 of those guys out and really catch them by surprise. Okay,
well, next segment we are going to be talking about the running backs, and to get us ready for that, we're going to have another Meet the Rookies, and this is Ray Calais.
All right.
Getting drafted was man, it was very emotional. The time when I got the call from the Bucs, it was crazy. I'm talking, everybody got quiet real quick, and then I was talking to Coach Aaron's on the phone, and he told me, are you ready to be a Buc? And I'm like, yes, sir. And I started crying. Everybody in my house went crazy. I'm talking about, it got so loud, I couldn't even hear what Coach Aaron's was saying. All I was saying was, yes, sir. Yes, sir. But everybody around me was making so much noise, man. It was, it was a great moment, and I will forever be thankful for the Bucs, and it's something I will never forget. next dream, man, is just to hopefully, go out there and score some touchdowns, man. Go out there and try to help this team, make it to the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. Some of the strongest attributes of my game, besides my speed, would definitely be catching the ball at the backfield. I think I'm gonna be a huge threat in the passing game. I can create mismatches for opposing defenses, and I can Tom Brady, he can give me the ball quick, and I can make a play. I'm very elusive and I'm fast. I can catch the ball in the backfield, but I'm also like the big play guy. My teammates in college used to call me Big Play Ray, because every time I get the ball, I would turn like a 4 to 5 yard carry to an 80-yard touchdown, or like a 10-yard catch to like a 40-yard catch touchdown. So I'm all about bringing the energy, and making the big play. My mom, she has been a person that I can lean on for anything pertaining to sports. She would take me and my brothers to our football games, to our track events, to our basketball games, and so I really want to commend my mom for that, because she sacrificed so much for me. So now it's my turn to give back to her and show her my appreciation for her. But team wise, obviously it's to make it to the playoffs and Super Bowl. And individually wise, my goal is to go in there and to score really 10 touchdowns. So just to go out there, and score some points.
Welcome back into Training Camp Live, presented by Publix. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith here, and we are going to be talking about the running backs in this block. We know that has been a group that everyone has been curious about. It already worked out well that we did already have a Facebook question from Michael asking, how big of a jump does Rojo make from last year to this year? So I figured
that's a really good question. He made a huge jump last year, considering that in his rookie year, I think he had 77 yards from scrimmage, 44 of them rushing, and that obviously wasn't what the Buccaneers expected when they drafted him high in the second round and expected to pair him with Peyton Barber. I think he made some personal progression into going in his second year, which a lot of guys do, but also a new coaching staff came in, so he got a clean slate. In his rookie season, it didn't work out right away. It wasn't working in preseason. It didn't work at the beginning of the season, and he kind of just got left behind. The offense kind of moved on without him. But last year, he got those opportunities, did well early on, and by midseason, he'd taken the starting job away, although he was still splitting carries with Peyton. So he got up to, I think, about 724 rushing yards, which obviously is a huge jump. He got just over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. I think this year he actually gets to 1,000 yards, which is kind of the holy grail for running backs, right? I mean, the leaders in the league usually are around more like 1,400 or 1,500, but getting that 1,000 yards is kind of a thing that every running back wants to do. I think he makes it this year, and I'll tell you why. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry last year, which is pretty good, and that was on 10.75 carries per game. He's the main guy now, and if he gets 15 carries and maintains that same rate, he'll be over 15 carries a game. He'll be over 1,000 yards, and that's not at all unreasonable to expect. And actually, he could do even better than that at 4.2. But I'm just saying, start there at the baseline. He looks great out here. He knows the offense a lot better. He's confident, obviously. He's very confident, and he knows that the team has confidence in him. I mean, he's really in a good position to succeed right now. So I think I see him making that jump to 1,000 yards.
And a guy rushing, yes. And a guy that we haven't talked a ton about in terms of the running back position, but that could have factored into how many make the team because of special teams duties, is TJ Logan. And unfortunately, he went down with an injury yesterday in practice. And I don't know how much, there's always kind of rumors around that. And not sure that, publicly we've come out with what the situation is there. But if he were to go down or if he were to be available, the difference is that would make either way on this roster.
Yeah, TJ actually went down just about right behind us there on a play where he's trying to get around the outside and went down in a pile. I have learned through the years not to speculate much on injuries. One thing, I've proven to be very, very bad at it. So
Dr. Scott is not a thing.
It's not a good look for me. I will say he was taken in on a cart. He was not putting weight on it. It didn't look particularly good. And of course, we have seen reports, but like you say, we don't report on something like that until the team officially says something. So maybe Bruce will discuss that today after practice, but it didn't look good. And if TJ, who's had some other unfortunate injury luck in his career, which is unfortunate particularly because he's with a coach that really likes him, really wanted to use him in Arizona, made sure he got him here when he was waived by the Cardinals, has really been trying to use TJ Logan, and just the injuries keep getting in the way. That would probably mean something to Ray Calais, who we just watched that piece on, because I do honestly think that TJ and Ray were battling for maybe a fourth spot, and being the kick returner would probably win that person that job, because I'm of the opinion after watching last year that the Bucs will probably keep 4 running backs. So that 4th spot will probably go to a guy that does something on special teams, and that could be the kick return job. So I'm sure Ray Calais isn't happy about getting his opportunity increased in this way, but that's just the fact of the matter right now.
Right, and that's, again, where we talked about how special teams such a huge role sometimes in who makes the roster, and the position that Coach said he was almost most concerned about losing time in during training camp, and this is one of those areas where it could make a big difference. And then now with TJ Logan going down, it could mean that Ray Calais gets a chance. And outside of the return job, do you feel like Ray Calais is someone who could contribute as a running back as well?
Yeah, but I think you need the return job to be first on the roster and then active on game day so that you can be used, because I would think he would be a guy that you would use in small bits. You're already feeding Ronald Jones and probably some combination of Keyshawn Vaughn and LaShawn McCoy, so there's just only so many opportunities. So what you do is you devise some special plays for that 4th guy, and you try to use him in that way, but you don't put him back there for like an entire series, right? So getting that special teams foot in the door is the important part there. And most running backs don't really do it. There are exceptions sometimes, but most running backs don't do a ton on special teams if they're not the return guy. So that's why I was focusing on that for Ray Calais.
So now let's look at the other guys that are part of this position group. In particular, LaShawn McCoy and Dare Ogunbowale. A lot of people have talked about it the same way you said TJ Logan and Ray Calais were sort of competing for the same spot there, that maybe Dare and LaShawn McCoy are kind of competing for that 3rd down back. Do you feel like it's as easy to explain as that, or is there maybe more to it than that?
You know, I doubt that the coach would put it in such simple terms, but that is what it looks like to me on paper. And there you see all the running backs that are in the mix. And if TJ Logan is unable to come back, you're talking about 5 guys for probably 4 spots. So that, it's possible that you could keep McCoy and Ogunbowale. There is a way there. And of course, Ogunbowale can also return kicks. We've seen him do that. So I guess we have to put that as part of it as well. But it does look like, on paper, you got Rojo as the main guy. You got Keyshawn Vaughn, who I explained the other day as a 3rd-round pick is almost surely not going to get cut. It's only happened one time in 40 years of Buccaneer football that a 3rd-round guy didn't at least make the team. That doesn't mean he has a job right away, but he makes the team. And then you got LaShawn McCoy, who can help you as a 3rd-down back because he's really experienced. You probably feel good about his savvy in terms of blocking. And then Dare, who was a 3rd-down back last year, had a decent number of catches, but also really had the coach's trust in terms of pass protection. You're not going to play on 3rd down if they don't trust you in pass protection, as Ronald Jones found out last year. So it looks on paper, it makes sense that you would think those 2 guys were in competition for that job, but there's probably some other avenues that they could both make it.
And then how about Keyshawn Vaughn? Where could he potentially fall into that mix and the role that he could play?
Yeah, I could see Keyshawn Vaughn being a guy that sort of ramps up as the season goes along, because again, he's another guy that has missed some time. He was on the COVID reserve list for a while, and of course, like all the rookies, he missed the whole offseason program that a rookie would normally get to get ready for training camp. And then, of course, training camp is kind of compressed. There's no preseason games. And Coach said the other day that Keyshawn doesn't look like a guy that's going to play a ton on special teams. So he'll be on the roster, but it could take him a while to carve out a role, and that could dictate if he's active on game day or not, because if you're not playing special teams and they only want to say keep up 3 backs that day, you might be the odd man out, because you can get your carries to to give Ronald Jones a rest from LaShawn McCoy and maybe Dare. So I could see it being something that has to develop through the season.
Okay, well, we are going to give you guys a look at our shots of the day, and then when we come back, we're going to be taking your questions on YouTube and Facebook, so make sure you use this break to get those in, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Appreciate you guys, all the love and support. What up, Bucs fans?
Shout out Ma, Grandma, my baby, Sarai, my family. So,
Hey, what up, Bucs fans? Appreciate y'all support, baby. Say y'all can't be here this year, but we gonna make up for it by competing real hard and get a lot more dubs this year than we did last year. Hi, Mom.
Welcome back into Training Camp Live, presented by Publix. We were having a very intense debate in our commercial break about where different movies were shot in the Tampa area. Edward Scissorhands
and
like
so
whether or not it was Pasco, whether or not it was Lutz. Very serious debates here that have a lot to do with Buccaneer football in this commercial break. Okay, we are going to be taking Facebook and YouTube questions from you guys in this segment, so we can dive right on into those. We had several people ask about whether or not the practice games that Coach talked about that would happen in Raymond James Stadium would be something that the public would watch if it could be live streamed or something. And he didn't address that, but I think we could probably go out on a limb and say probably not, because they'd be doing most of their strategy type stuff.
There won't be fans at that.
Yes.
For sure. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be tighter restrictions on what can be reported from it, as a matter of fact, because like you said, they're going to be installing some stuff there.
Yes. Daniel asked, what do you think about Tanner Hudson's chances this year?
The numbers are rough, right? But do remember that we have a 16-man practice squad, and Tanner Hudson, I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's a guy they would want to keep around just because, I mean, he's got fantastic hands. Look at what happened with Cam Brate. I mean, it took him a little while to get his foot in the door. And then, just when he kept getting opportunities, he kept making the most of them. And now he's a really established, great NFL tight end. So Tanner's a guy that switched positions in college. And so it's not like he's been playing the position his entire career. So he's probably still developing. I can imagine that blocking is probably the biggest thing for him in terms of developing. Compared to some of our other tight ends, he's not as big. And he hasn't done as much blocking in college and so on. So, but he seems like he just has a ton of potential in terms of being a pass catcher. So, if I was a betting man, I'd say they find a way to keep him around, but the numbers to stay on the active roster with those first three top guys, and then also Anthony Auclair, who they absolutely love as a blocker, and even Cody McElroy is a pretty interesting guy too, with his skill set. So it's not easy, but I just have a feeling that somewhere or another Tanner will be around.
And Michael had asked about Reed Sinet's chances, the fourth quarterback, and how he's been looking.
Well, I just go back to the fact that before the draft, both Bruce and Jason Light said clearly that several times that they would like to come out of the draft somehow, or the draft weekend that is, somehow with a developmental quarterback. And, obviously with the needs we had in the early rounds, it wasn't going to be an early round guy, especially after you signed Tom Brady. They weren't looking for somebody to compete right away. They wanted to get a guy later. And just the draft never quite fell the way they wanted to in terms of this is a good time to take this guy. But then they had their eyes on, and at the time they didn't tell us who, but they're like, there is a guy that went undrafted that we really like, and obviously it turned out to be Reed Sinet. So they really specifically targeted a developmental quarterback, and it would be surprising to me if he didn't stick around for a little while at least on the practice squad so they could find out if he was a guy they could do that with. I mean, I would say if that didn't happen, it would mean that training camp didn't go particularly well for him. And it's hard to tell with your fourth-string quarterback because he's not getting a huge amount of reps. But I think there's a good chance that he sticks around on the practice squad.
Okay, and that will be an interesting story. I mean, he only got to start that 1 year in college and to be able
but did great.
But did great. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting
He looks the part.
Yeah, it's true.
Really does.
He's built like the quarterback. And, yeah. We had another question asking, we seem to be very deep everywhere. What position would you improve the depth if you could?
I've been saying throughout the entire offseason that the position that worries me in that regard is outside linebacker. But that's obviously not an opinion that's shared by Bruce Arians and the coaching staff, because they don't seem to be concerned about that at all. They obviously like Anthony Nelson a ton, and they like some of these young guys that maybe a lot of fans haven't heard about, like Kazan Daniels and Quentin Bell, Cam Gill. But still, I wouldn't be upset if before the season they signed a veteran off that's still available to be like maybe your fourth guy in your rotation there. That guy doesn't have to play a ton, but it would be nice. You know, like last year we had Sam Acho around as basically that guy. It would be nice to have a guy that you had a little bit of NFL proven experience in case none of these young undrafted or seventh-round rookies really pans out. I think they prefer that those guys pan out, but that's a position where I wouldn't mind seeing a little added depth.
And Justin asked, which of our DBs is the hardest hitter?
It's probably Jordan Whitehead, and he's going to hurt you now the way he's rocked up, right? He certainly likes to hit, that's for sure, and he's made some hits already in this training camp, not really trying to take a guy to the ground, but sort of when there's a pass underneath and he reads it quickly and comes downhill real quick. He's done it to O.J. Howard a couple times and arrives and hits O.J. just as the pass is arriving and knocks it down. Yeah, I think I'd have to go with Jordan Whitehead.
And Cornell asked, how much longer will Vita Vea have the hand cast on, and is it stopping him from clogging the hole during running plays?
I wonder if that's former Buccaneer offensive tackle Cornell Green.
I don't think so. You
don't think so?
I don't.
Maybe
I don't think so.
Maybe he still follows the team. I mean, Cornell's not that common of a name, you know.
That is true.
Vita Vea, it will not have the cast on too much longer. Coach said that yesterday, as a matter of fact. He's not going to have to worry about it in the regular season. The word that Coach used about it coming off was soon, so interpret that as you wish. But I don't think he's going to have to deal with it much longer. But Coach also said that Vita's having a great camp, and that's not really holding him back at the moment. So, you know, there's different things required in a training camp practice than a game, and you'd like to have both your hands available in a game rather than have to wear that club. But so apparently so far it's not really holding him back.
Okay. And Jay asked, who do you think will be our slot wide receiver this year?
Chris Godwin, because he's one of the best slot receivers in the entire league. In fact, he led the NFL with 532 yards on passes caught over the middle of the field. And Coach even said that the other day, because everybody looks at Scotty Miller and then they look at Tom Brady and go, okay, Tom Brady's going to turn Scotty Miller into Julian Edelman. And by the way, Tom Brady does seem to like throwing to Scotty Miller quite a bit. I've seen a lot of that. But Coach always responds to that sort of question with like, well, he can play in the slot and we might use him in there, but we don't put any guy in one spot only. And we really like what he can do on the outside due to his speed. And we really like what Chris Godwin does in the slot. So clearly Chris Godwin is still your main slot guy. Some other guys will get some work in there, but it's Godwin for sure.
Okay. And Charlie asked, how good do you think the kickers could be this year? And so looking at that position battle and then just the confidence you have in that position.
Well, kicker Matt Gay, the place kicker, assuming he beats out Elliott Fry and keeps that job, he could be really good. I mean, listen, if you take the Matt Gay from the first 13 weeks of last season, you're very, very happy with that, particularly because he was a rookie. He missed the one kick very glaringly that could have won the game against the Giants. But other than that, he was pretty darn good through his first 13 games. I think he had missed 3 total, which is pretty good. And his kicking, his field goal percentage at that time ranked 7th in the NFL. I think we're happy with that compared to where our game's been for like most of the last decade, right? And then the last 3 games really, really sort of slumped badly, especially in the last game where I think he missed 3. I think one of them was blocked. And that hurt his numbers quite a bit to the point where now you weren't happy with the team field goal percentage by the end of the year. But if you think you can get that Matt Gay of the first 13 games for 16 games, then you've got a pretty good, darn good kicker. As for the punter, the greatest thing that Bradley did last year was make a huge impact on special teams. His punting numbers weren't at the top, although the team did like how well he placed and his directional kicking and so on. So I think they were fine with the work he did as a punter, but he took his value to another level with his kickoffs. Actually set an NFL record for the most kickoff touchbacks in a season. And, there are different philosophies between different teams. Do you want to just take the touchback, or do you want to try to pin them inside the 20. And clearly our philosophy is let's not take the risk. Let's take every touchback we can get, and they've got Bradley Pinion to do that.
Okay, and I thought this was a good one. We haven't talked about this too much. Latrey asked, what are your thoughts on the recent signing of Love, the defensive lineman that we got from the Panthers?
That was a good. That would have been a good answer for where we could use a little depth, and so you feel a lot better about your interior line depth after him. He's a guy that's got a lot of experience, right? He's played a lot. He even played in New England with Tom Brady, so it's nice to have that little bit of extra veteran depth in there. Although there's pretty decent depth already. If you want to just consider Kyle Love a replacement for Bo Allen, you essentially have maintained your depth from a year ago. And he looks like a really big guy out here. So you think, okay, a guy that's going to clog the middle. But the other day, Coach mentioned that he's actually showing a little bit of ability to penetrate the backfield. So if he can give you any little bit of production, I think it was a good signing.
And we'll close with this one. We had a question from YouTube asking, who does Antoine Winfield Jr. remind you of with his style of play?
That is a good question. I don't know if I'm going to be able to match it with a good answer, though. I don't know. I mean,
we can come back to that next show.
Let me think about it a little bit.
Let you ponder that, and then we can.
He's not the biggest guy, but he's very versatile and athletic. And he said, apparently he'll stick his face in there. He's not big, but he's willing to hit. I have to sort of think about what that means. Maybe he could be a honey badger type.
Interesting. Okay, I like that one. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Training Camp Live presented by Publix. The team actually has tomorrow off. It is their player day off, so we will not have a show, but we will be back here on Sunday at 8:30 in the morning. There's our Training Camp Live schedule unless practice changes, so we'll see you then.